Well, welcome everyone, and so glad that we are here tonight on BLAW Live, and I'm so glad that you're with us. And please, if you would, let someone know that we're here. You can certainly send out the link, or you can have a watch party. You can just let people know that we're here. And tonight we are wonderfully blessed tonight to have a special guest with us. BLAW Live is really about just offering these types of conversations that will inspire you, that will empower you, that will really help you to do so much better in your life. And especially as a believer in Christ, we want to talk about just really everyday issues and some things and some concerns that may be on your heart as well. So if we can help with that, if you have some ideas, please let us know. You can always put it in the chat box, or you can send us an email and just let us know what you're thinking. So tonight, we are so blessed to have with us a special guest in the person of Crystal McLean. And she's a native of Fayetteville, North Carolina. She's also alumni of Fayetteville State University. She received a bachelor's degree in banking and finance. She's also a proud supporter of her community, and she's involved in numerous volunteer and charitable organizations. And she has a powerful ministry with her husband, working as youth pastors in their local church. His name is Brandon, and they have a wonderful daughter named Harmony. And so we're so glad that she's here today. She's going to be talking about, and we're going to be talking about, a very special passion that I have as it relates to helping people with their money. But tonight, we're going to be talking about children. And so she's a book writer, and she's an author, and she wrote Harmony, and it's not Harmony, Harmony, right? And Empty Piggy Bank. She's an author which helps children and their families when it comes to management, savings, investing, donating, and entrepreneurship, and planning their future. And so tonight, we are so glad for Crystal being with us tonight. Hi, Crystal, how are you?
Hello, how are you, Lawrence?
I am I'm doing good. It's one of those things in Boston right now. It is a cold day, and I'm sure you're not having as cold as this. It's something like, boy, like 22 degrees here
Oh,
in
wow.
Boston. So I hope that you're warmer than I am, definitely.
Definitely, and I'm grateful for that.
Well, it's good to know that you are doing such great work in the area of finance and banking. And we're going to be talking tonight about what it means to help our children, our young people, and our families. So I have a question I just want to just lead off with is why is this an important focus for you to make financial awareness for our children kind of like brought to the forefront? Why is that important?
I think for me, or more so, I know for me, the fact that I didn't have it, I saw the remnants or the aftermath of not having the teaching and that foundation of learning about money at a young age. So quite naturally, without the foundation, I made a lot of mistakes out of ignorance, really just because I didn't know, I wasn't taught. And so I found myself in my 20s, pretty much throughout my whole 20s, trying to repair all the mistakes I made as a child, growing up. And then you go to a teenager. Then I was the first in my family to go to college. So I didn't really know. I didn't have a background as to, how do you handle credit cards when they offer it on campus. I didn't have a background onto, how you handle your student loans. You don't take your whole refund check and go shopping like I did. Like, I learned all this stuff after the fact. And so, being very reactive was frustrating because I'm thinking, like, why is this not taught? Why did no one teach me? And it was out of frustration that I started learning for myself. And, with my daughter, it just became like, well, okay, you were mad that you didn't learn. Don't let that same cycle continue. And so for me, writing the book was more so for her, and teaching it was more so for her, but then it began to flourish into something much bigger. So it just came from a place of frustration of, why is this not taught? Why did I have to struggle through my life, my whole, 18 through 26-ish, to figure these things out because I wasn't taught it.
Wow. And that's very enlightening because I can tell you, my mom was very good in the finances. My dad, depended on her a lot to really organize our finances for our home. But I went out there and made some mistakes too in college. And it's one of those things where credit cards kind of did me in, and I didn't really
Mhm.
understand that. So when it comes to financial literacy in the matter of teaching young children, um, how can parents really start conversations in this area of finance? And maybe they just feel very scared about it, or they feel that they're not qualified because maybe they didn't do a good job with it either.
Yeah.
What
You
would you
know,
say?
I get that question a lot. Like how can I teach my children about financial literacy when I barely know? So I get that question a whole lot. And how I answer that question is take them on the journey with you. Don't feel like you have to hide this process until you get it right. Like while you're in the repairing stage, take them on that journey with you and let them see the negative impacts. Because for me, if I saw growing up like this is what happens when you don't pay your bills, like a repossession, or this is what happens when explain those moments to them. Of course it's not beautiful moments in your eyes, because it's like it's embarrassing. A lot of people talk about the guilt and the shame and the embarrassment, the emotional process that happens with money. And so a lot of parents don't want to introduce that side of it, but I believe that if you begin to introduce them to these things, whether it's like this is what you should not do or this is what you should do, take them on a journey with you. If you're paying your credit card debts off, let them sit down and see how much interest is. And maybe they don't understand it now, but over time, you having that conversation over and over, they will begin to understand that, okay, I don't really need to do that. Okay, when they offer it, I don't need to, accept that offer, things like that. So number one is taking on the journey. And then another thing is like when you're going to the grocery store and you're doing, stuff that in our mind seems simple, start explaining it. Let them be the one to swipe the debit card. Show them make sure you check your receipt. Make sure you count your change, all of that, because these are small things, but ultimately it grows into something more because the children will start to get curious about this. My daughter is 9 and she talks about money like like an adult, but that's because I've been introducing small things over time. So take them on a journey with you.
Wow. So, so taking them on the journey, at what point does the journey start? I know as you're talking to young people about different, subjects and different topics in life, um, sometimes they're ready at one stage to have a discussion, and sometimes they're not ready at that stage to take on a discussion. So could you kind of give me maybe a model of kind of how you walk that through at what age?
Sure, that's good. So you can start as young as when you start reading them books. There's like Dr. Seuss books that have money with pennies in it. And so you're starting to talk about the value of money at a young age, right? You may have the little piggy bank. And so now you're like, okay, all right, now pick that off the floor. Let's add a quarter to that. So now you're teaching them the value of when you work, you earn something. So something goes in that little jar, right? And so now they're building it. Maybe over time you start to count it with them. All right, we had 10 cents and we had another 10 cents in. How much does that equal? So as they're going through that journey of counting in school, don't let it be limited to just counting. Let it be, a little bit more open now, the conversation of, okay, 10 plus 10 equals 20, 10 cent plus 10 cent equals 20 cent. So now you're introducing it on that level. And then as they start getting a little bit older, if your household believes in allowance, I don't really believe in giving money for something that you're supposed to do, but we have introduced it in a different way where it's more so like, we want to reward you for different things, not just cleaning up your room because you better be doing it. But we want to reward you for different things. So okay, now let's talk about, now the money is in. All right, now what are you going to do with it? You're going to put a portion into your piggy bank, into your savings account. Then you're going to take a portion and pay your tithes, because we believe in tithing. Then you're going to take a portion and you get to spend that portion. And then you set another side, just in case you want to spend a little bit more, but you have your savings already set aside. And then you have your tithing already set aside. Some people call it charitable. And then you have the amount that you're able to spend. Now you're taking them through that journey of how to budget, how to plan. And then as they get older, you start talking about debit card versus credit card. You start talking about interest. You start talking about, so all of those topics kind of lead up, but you can start as early as they start. You start doing those mommy and me readers. So it's not, I don't feel like it's too young. Some people feel like, I don't want to introduce money to my kids because I want them to be a child and I don't want them to think about that. But I just believe like this is a part of what they're growing up to. And if we could teach them all these other things about brush your teeth because that's a part of your dental health, or, say excuse me because that's a part of respect factor and all these things, then why not teach them money health at a young age?
Wow, that's awesome. I think it's incredible, especially when you talk about savings, but also you talk about tithing. It's like, these days a lot of adults don't know what it means to tithe. Never mind talking to children about tithing, giving your 10% of your income to charitable organizations, especially if you're a Christian and giving it to your church.
Yeah.
But that is quite awesome. I was taught to tithe as a little child as well, but
Mhm.
that's really good that you're teaching children about donating and charitable giving and also tithing.
That's right.
As a you and your husband local church pastors in terms of youth pastors. You actually serve the young people at your local church. So when it comes to financial literacy, do you implement any of that in your youth work at all at your church?
So we have in the past, we have not, ever since the book launched in the middle of COVID. So there was no services going on and all of that. But prior to, we've had conversations around it. Our ultimate goal is we're going to have coming up real soon is a vision day, a dream day. So in that, we will talk about money, but we're going to talk a little bit more about how to identify your dream, your goals, your desires, because a lot of time I see in the school system, they lead you on what job do you want to get. And I get that to a certain extent, but then it limits them to feel like, okay, I only work for a job at some point. I'm only going to school for a job at some point that I have to then pay student loans back in order to fund, so it's like this cycle. Whereas now, if we can get them at this age and introducing the topic of money, but also talking about vision, goal setting, planning, and all of that, we believe, it's important, the spiritual side as well as the natural side, to make them overall successful. And kingdom ambassadors, like, right? Like, we're here to be lights in this world. So, we the whole youth, right?
Yeah.
So introducing topic of money and that vision dream event, as well as talking about goal setting and what they plan or what they like to do, to really get their minds thinking about those topics.
Wow. That's great. That's great. So the topic of financial literacy for children, would you say that should be implemented in our discipleship models? As a pastor, I believe that, finance is so important. After all, there's like over 2,000 scriptures that relate to finances, especially when Jesus is talking.
Mhm.
How would you say that is important for the development of children in their faith?
Well, I believe that it's so important because if you think about it from the context of stewardship, you then see that, again, we are mere stewards of what God has given us. And so it's just like with our health or with anything else. How are we responding as those stewards, right? Like, you think about the different parables in the Bible where Jesus was talking, and a lot of it was about stewardship. How are you handling what the king has gifted to you for that moment to manage it, right? Like, how are you handling that? And so, if we talk about it not just from a financial perspective, but an overall perspective, finances is in there, and so, when we really just deal with it and just that itself, that you are a mere steward over this, right? And the way you handle it is so important to the king because he has given you this to be able to serve the kingdom. And so how do you handle that? Are you selfishly like greedy, or are you, and so you can start to deal with all those concepts. Are you just, willingly just throwing it out there, spending it on all this frivolous stuff, and then now you have nothing to show for it. How are you really representing the kingdom if you can't really tell the king what you spent, what he gave you, right? He only asked for the 10%, but the 90 is up to us. How do you manage the 90%? So it's very important, when we talk about discipleship, when we talk about, you know, really the important aspect of it, of our spiritual life. The Father looks at how we handle what he's given us. And so I'm not going to bless you. A lot of people are like, I'm going to be a millionaire. Well, well, that's beautiful, great, awesome. Oh, I wish that for you. But the point is this, like, how are you handling the 1,000 he's giving you? How are you handling and managing, the 1,400 a month you receive? Like, are you frivolously, are you budgeting that? Are you planning that? Or are you, like, and then you can't really get mad if he don't trust you with an extra increase, because the amount you have now, you haven't managed it appropriately. So it's very important that we don't just like keep saying, God, give me more, give me more. He's looking at how are you managing what you have right now.
Wow. And you're absolutely right. It's amazing. It's amazing how God trusts us enough to give us anything,
Mhm.
but yet He expects a lot of us. He said, "To whom much is given,
Much is
much
required.
is going to be required." Yeah,
That's right.
that's great. So I want to go back to talking about parents, and particularly, what advice would you give a couple who may be having, you know, issues around their money? Because as a pastor, one of the three big issues that couples really deal with, that is either a make or break sometimes, is communication, sex, and money. So, what
Yep.
would you say to parents who might be having, in couples who are having issues around money?
I would say this because my husband and I, when we first got married, you think about it, you got two individuals and now they're bringing all this stuff together, right? So now it's like the collision of who's working in the kitchen, who's gonna be the one, and so we went through that phase, and it was rough in the beginning because it's like, well, I was managing my bills first, and I did mine's like this, and I was managing my, and so we literally had to have a conversation where we sat down to say, okay, how are we gonna do this? Like, it's not, because ego can come into play. Like, well, I manage money on a regular. Well, I've been, so ego can be really big when it comes to money. And so you have to really check that heart, check your heart posture to say, okay, God, is he really the one to handle it better than me? Or am I the one to handle it? And so we had to sit down and have that honest conversation. So I feel like number one would definitely be communication, and communication from an open heart standpoint. So I would even admonish couples to pray before you have that conversation, because that's if your heart is not right before you go into it, it's gonna get a little lit in there. Okay, so you got to make sure that you're your heart is in a place of receiving, and that may mean criticism. That may mean your spouse may say, look, you the one that spent all the money, so you don't need to be the one managing nothing right now until you get yourself together. So anyway, the point is conversation, honest, open conversation, but in a way that you both are able to receive it. Number two, my husband and I, we do what is called a household prep section or segment. And every quarter, once a quarter, we sit down. We always go outside of the house because we don't believe in having that conversation in the house, because our house is our safe haven. That's where, peace is. And so if we're going to have that type of conversation, we know that's a conversation where we're going to get down to the nitty gritty. We always go outside the house. So we end up going to like Barnes and Noble or Starbucks or something like that. And we sit down and we go through our budget, and we go through our net worth. We go through our debt. We go through everything, and we say, okay, where we are right now, what do we plan to be by next quarter? Now, what do we plan to be by next year? Now, what are we going to have to do that? We're going to have to cut this off. We're going to have to do this. You can't do this time. And we have to honestly go through that together. And I feel like because we're doing it as a business meeting, a lot of times it don't seem like personal, like a personal attack, right? And so having that honest conversation, I admonish household prep meetings where you're both able to collectively sit down as business partners to say, where are we and where do we plan to be? And then grace, right? Grace. So I had to learn this going in, that when one would make mistake or I would make a mistake or vice versa, I started off by just like, wow, like, why would you do that? And it just caused, like, of course, issue, guilt, shame, all these other things. But now, thank Thank you, Holy Spirit, that I'm able to walk in grace with that conversation. So forgiveness and grace, and be patient with each other as you go through that journey. Don't think it's going to happen overnight, because it's two personalities coming together to make one vision happen. So those are the three things that I would definitely throw out there.
Wow. So how do you get by egos?
Mm.
How do you get by all of that to be able to get down to the nitty gritty and to get to the practicalities of how to handle finance?
I think one, it's definitely gonna be prayer, because I had an ego. I'm not gonna lie, I had an ego going into it, because I'm like, I know what I'm doing. So, and it was like the Lord had to check me, like, barely. Like, I'm showing you what to do. So if I wasn't showing you what to do, you wouldn't know what you're doing. So right. So he had to check me first. And that comes with our relationship, right? So he gets me in a place where it's like, calm your behind down, get that pride out. So one, coming through that relationship with the Father, but then two, it's like sitting down and communicating and hearing his heart, like hearing my husband's heart say, I really didn't mean to make that mistake, but I didn't know that you had this, this, and this. And so it was a battle of like, okay, there was a misunderstanding in communication. Communication is big, but being honest and open. That spouse that feels like, you're not listening to me when I tell you these things, or whatever the case is. Sometimes it may not be out of ego. Sometimes it may just be out of like guilt, like I can't carry the household like I want to. So now all these other emotions come into play, and it looks like ego. So I believe, like, really get down to the root of it, because especially for like a husband, if a husband don't feel like he's able to provide, then that comes like a weight or burden. I've seen and heard that so many times. And so you have to, as a wife, I feel you have to, really be able to come to a humble place, and not just being around like, well, you supposed to be the one to carry the load. Well, no, okay. Let's bring this down foundationally and say, okay, I know that you desire to take care of the household. I know that if you could right now, you would do this, this, and this. But right now, where we are, we're in this place. We really need to be at this place. What is your vision? And just sit back and listen, because a lot of times, especially as women, I don't know, but especially as women, we don't take the time to listen. I'm just speaking on me. We don't take the time to listen. But when you take the time to listen and say, what is your vision for us getting from A to C? And listen, take notes. And I feel like that already gives that man that like, okay, wait, she listening to me. Let me,
Let's
let me
come
let her
with it.
know.
Let's come with it.
Right. Now let me throw it all out there. And so, but oftentimes we don't even give them that space or that place to let them be open and honest and say, I actually do got a vision. I actually do have a plan, but you haven't given me a chance to, do it. So I just feel like calming down, being patient with each other, and then listen, like honestly, like listening.
Wow, that's very insightful. That's very insightful. Um, I'd like to kind of push on a little bit. Um, how do you deal with the pressure? And you have a daughter, and as we're looking at what's going on around us, and the pressure for parents to buy things that their children want because they see other children have it, whether it's video games to, going out to certain places to eat and the kind of food. I mean, there's so much pressure. When I was growing up, there were certain things that, you knew what your limitations were because they told you. It's like, okay, we going in the store. My mother said, we're going in the store now, and I don't want you to be acting up because this is what we're going to get. And if you like a candy bar, you're going to get one thing, not a whole bunch, one thing. But I find that a lot of parents are pressured now. You know, the soccer team needs, they need uniforms for that. They want to participate in sports and all these other things, and they want, material things that their friends may have, but they don't. How do you, as a parent, what would you say to other parents to help them to deal with that pressure?
That is such a great question. I'm gonna tell you one thing that has been huge for us, and you touched on it when you stated it, Lawrence. That expectation, setting those expectations and those boundaries, right? So like, my daughter has been wanting a cell phone forever, not getting it. We've had conversations. And it's not for a fact that we can't afford it. It's not, it is literally, one, we don't feel like right now you're at the right age. And then two, we don't feel like you're responsible enough right now to be able to handle it, right? So the next best thing for her at the time was a tablet. Guess what she did? We talked about it. I said, well, right now, how are you going to get that tablet? And I didn't say we don't have the money to do it, because I don't believe in, because now you start to throw in all these generational things right there. Oh, we don't have it. We broke. No, I don't speak that. No, because we're not. But the point is, and even if we were in between blessings, I never say blow. Even if we were in between blessings, the point is, I'm not throwing that off on her. So then she grows up with this limited mindset to say, okay, well, I can't do this because of da 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 da. So what we did was we asked her. We said, "What's your plan? You want this tablet, how much does it cost?" And so she had to do her research. She came back to us, well, it costs this much. Okay, where's it, where are you gonna get it from? Well, it's at Best Buy. Okay, great. How are you gonna get that much money? And so she came up with a plan, and it literally was a model of, according to the book. She did a lemonade stand. We posted, flash. She asked me, "Mommy, can you make me a little logo?" Like, she went through this whole process. She watched YouTube videos on it. So the point is, I think a lot of times as parents, we have to, one, pause. Don't make rash decisions because you feel the pressure. No, uh, the biggest thing you can give your child is something that will cause them to think, right? So the fact that you want this tablet, research, plan, prepare, now put in, put in the work and all of that. Now they honor that gift. Now they're grateful for that gift versus you just giving it, and then you see 3 weeks later it's on the ground, they done stepped over and all of that. I don't. So one is set boundaries. Like you said, you going into a grocery store or you're going into Walmart, set the boundaries. Look, when we go in here, I want you to understand this is the only thing you'll be able to get, whatever the case is. Set those boundaries so that they understand going into it. And then it helps them to start setting boundaries in their finances. It flows over. So, okay, I'm going to the mall. I'm only going to be able to get these shoes, or I'm only going to be able to do this as they get older, because they've remembered those conversations, right? But don't fall into the crowd. Don't compromise because everybody is doing it. There's many 8, 9, 7 year olds out here with phones. I'm not pressured because I know our household, we've set a foundation and we understand why we're doing what we're doing. So you need to know what you're doing as a household, collectively come together and say, this is our budget, this is what we have set aside, and here are the boundaries.
Wow, that's very clear.
Hmm.
That's very clear because it is setting the expectations for our children as it relates to money and how the household spends money.
That's right.
Wow, that's really awesome. So now that you're an author, how does someone who's watching get in touch with you or get your resources? Could you just tell us a little about how they can get more information?
Sure. So the easiest thing you can do to stay in the loop on everything I'm doing is you can go to my website at www.authorcrystalmclean.com, and you can subscribe to it. And so then you're on the VIP list where you're able to get all the alerts on what we're doing, when we're doing it, and all the goods, right? And then you can also follow me on social media, Facebook at Author Crystal McLean, and then Instagram at I am Crystal McLean. And that's another place where I post resources. I post a lot of times I'll post like a tips for parents on how to have those conversations, some tips for even educators. So those are some great places to follow me and really get the behind the scenes, and some really good strategies as well. And then follow us on our journey, because this is not the only book, right? So we got some other stuff coming down the pipeline. We got some for the younger kiddos. We got some for the adults, right? So don't think it's just limited to this age group. That was just the foundation, but stay tuned, get connected so you're able to follow us on this journey.
Wow, thank you so much. That's great information, and I just wish you well, and we're praying that God will use you to be an instrument of His grace in this area, and that you and your husband we bless as you do youth ministry together, and really help develop the disciples, the young disciples, especially in this area of finance. So I appreciate you being a part of the BLAW Live program this evening. And so, for those of you who are out there, I just want to challenge you. Um, as you heard the discussion and the real great tips that Krista has been talking to us about, how might you take all of what she's saying and implement that into your context? Our young people really need to know how to handle God's resources. And he's blessed in whatever way he's blessed you, whether it's a small amount or whether you think it's a large amount, whatever we're responsible for, he wants us to use it wisely and he wants us to use it for the glory of God. So I appreciate you coming. I appreciate you, Crystal, for being here. And for those of you on BLAW Live, thank you so much for your support and subscribe to us. We're on YouTube, and so you can actually subscribe, and you can also look at our YouTube archives if you want to find out various speakers that we've had on to talk about everything from mental health to actually talking about issues of race. So you can also check us out on YouTube. So with that, we say thank you. God bless you. May heaven smile upon you. And I look forward to seeing you again on BLAW Live, Bishop Larry Wood Live. God bless you and have a great evening. Take care now. Bye-bye.